Welcome, everybody, to Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor's newest program, Interfaith News and Views, with our co-hosts, Rabbi Barry Silver of Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor and Pastor Fritz Aufdencamp. And take it away, gentlemen. I think this is going to be a fascinating and exciting discussion, and we've got other people coming on, so hopefully we'll have some interaction with some of our guests. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for making this possible. Sharon was telling me that we've had quite a few views by people on the internet afterwards, so I appreciate her doing this and making a recording of it so these programs can be watched in the future. Our goal here is to shed light on issues that are going on in the world today from an interfaith perspective. Tonight we'll have Fritz and I will be sharing our views, as well as anybody who's listening is welcome to join and give their opinion as well. In the future, we'll have guests from different religious traditions. What I wanted to talk about tonight are some of the things that are going on in the world, especially the Saudi Arabian takeover of the golf tournaments, the merger with the PGA, and also the other things that are going on in the world today in interfaith, is, for instance, the indictment of President Trump. I wanted to talk to Fritz about whether religious leaders should even comment on it. Should we be talking about this? Should we not have anything to say about this? Where should the religious community come down on issues like that? And what is the religious community doing to speak out on critical issues, and what should they be doing? Or should they just stick to religion and forget about what's going on in the world? Fritz, would you like to tackle any of those questions?
I definitely believe in the separation of church and state, but religious leaders definitely need to speak out on Donald Trump and what's going on there.
Well, how do you do that? How do you separate church and state, but still have religious leaders speaking out about what's going on with Trump? Where do you draw the line, or why is that kosher in your book?
Barry, I'm not real sure where to draw the line, but I know that what you believe religiously really affects your whole makeup as to how you react in society. And so we can't separate our religious views from our other views. That's next to impossible. I don't know. I really don't know where you draw the line I really don't know, Barry. I'm sorry, but I can't answer that.
Well, let me try to shed some light on it, and then you can tell me, and maybe the others can weigh in on this too, as far as where you think maybe we should draw the line. There's different issues involved. Issue number one is religious institutions are tax exempt. And because they're tax exempt, they are not permitted to do certain things which are deemed political. So that's one issue. Should they risk the tax exempt status in order to speak on issues? But leaving that aside, the other issue is what you raised, Fritz, church-state separation. That has nothing to do with whether you're tax exempt or not. That has to do with the principle that the government should not merge with religion in order to become a superpower of religion and government together. If you or I comment on what's going on in the world today from our religious perspective, that is not merging church and state, because you and I are not the government. That is simply offering an opinion based on our religious traditions and our religious values about what's going on in the world. So that has nothing to do with the merger of church and state. The other issue is, should religious leaders, preachers, should they comment on what's going on in the world today and on things like the indictment of President Trump? So let's leave aside tax exempt status. Let's leave aside merger of church and state. Is it proper for people of religion to weigh in on what's going on in politics, just as a matter of morality and as a matter of what's right or wrong?
How can you not do that?
Well, a lot of people are very upset, and they think you definitely should not do that. I do it all the time, but I've had countless people tell me and that I shouldn't do it. I've had people become outraged. I've received terrible hostile letters, people leaving the congregation saying you shouldn't comment on what's going on politics. Now, many people have a different definition of politics. If I were to say that I think we should fight and challenge global warming, do what we can to prevent that, they'll say, stop being political. If I were to say that Judaism believes in abortion rights, they'll say, you're too political. If I were to say that we should have reasonable gun control measures, they say that's being political. The definition of what is political is different for different people, but I don't think that's the litmus test. I don't think the litmus test is whether this fits in with your definition of political. I think the test is what is going on around us affecting the values and ideals that we champion? If Christians and Jews speak about compassion for the underprivileged, if we speak about nonviolence, if we speak about cherishing creation, then, as you say, Fritz, how could we not comment on things that are going to have a major effect on these vital issues like gun control, environmentalism, and helping the poor? How could we not? So for you and me, these things are moral imperatives. But many people, I believe, erroneously have the view that religion should stay out of these things. And I've often said, as far as being Jewish is concerned, for a Jewish person to remain silent about climate change would be like asking an eagle not to fly. For a Jewish person to say nothing about the guns that permeate our society would be like asking a cougar not to run. I mean, or a fish not to swim. These are things that are basic to Judaism, yet many, many, many Jews don't get it. And they think that there's something un-Jewish about doing that. And I couldn't disagree with them more. And I have the facts to back it up. Because Moses challenged Pharaoh, the prophet Nathan challenged King David, and the prophets always were castigating the king, which was the government, and challenging them and saying, you're not living up to Jewish ideals. So Jewish tradition, Jewish values absolutely morally compels us to speak out about these issues. Fritz, what do you think?
Our religion will not make progressive changes unless we as religious leaders say something. If we don't say anything, our religion will stay right where it is and nothing's going to change. But that's why people within the church have to speak out, or it's not going to change.
Right. Well, not only will the religion stay as it is, the religion will fall short of serving its most important purpose, which is not just to speak about platitudes, but to speak about things that matter. I think it was Martin Luther King who said, our lives begin to end when we stop talking about things that matter. Our religious life, our spiritual life begins to end when we have nothing to say about the issues that are so important in the world and affect the quality of life of literally billions of people. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this? Anybody listening in about whether they think religious leaders should speak up or not about different issues? Go ahead, Ginny.
Wait a minute, let me unmute you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. I think religious leaders have a moral imperative to speak out. I think it's important. You are the leaders of whatever denomination you're in. And I think I've always looked to leaders speaking out, hearing their opinions, and I find it very informative. I absolutely feel you have a moral obligation to speak out. And despite what people think, there are plenty of people that think like I do and we do, and would appreciate you speaking out. I would love to hear your thoughts. I look forward to it. I was really looking forward to tonight because I knew you would be discussing, these issues. And
well, Jenny,
I think it's very important.
Actually, Fritz and I were afraid to discuss the issues, but now that you say you're interested in hearing it, we will.
I want to hear it. Yeah, definitely.
I wish our Lutheran hierarchy could hear what you just said, because our Lutheran hierarchy is fearful of saying what they believe. They are afraid of the church.
Yeah, I wish our Jewish hierarchy could hear that too, but we have a whole congregation that's based on speaking out on issues. By the way, I also want to make sure that people understand something, that when a rabbi addresses issues, he's not saying that all Jews have to think this way, or that Judaism itself believes this. This is one rabbi's interpretation of how Jewish values and ideals reflect upon what's going on in the world. And at L'Dor Va-Dor, we welcome people to voice a different opinion. We frequently invite people who hold different views. We invite the congregants or guests to share different views. We welcome the dialogue, and we don't act as if what I am saying, this is the Jewish view on this, and that's the end. There's some religions where the minister tries to cultivate that type of
Right.
power around him. We don't. That's not our view. Our view is just, this is my take based on my understanding of Jewish tradition, values, and ideals, and I'd love to hear yours. So Fritz, let's get into it then. All right, let's get into, first of all, what is your take on Live, which is Saudi-backed, taking over golf? Do you believe that we should live and let live, or do you think that we should challenge?
Well, I've been traveling, so this big change has happened. I caught a bit of it on the news, but I would love, one of the major golfers spoke out vehemently about this merger, and I'm not sure I did not see what he said or how he verbalized why he felt that this merger should not have taken place, because it's almost feeding into what's going on over there.
Yeah, well, what happened was the head of the PGA was confronted by Liv, who was paying its golfers large amounts of money in order to defect from the PGA and go over to their tournament. And they were being offered hundreds of millions of dollars. According to reports, Tiger Woods turned down in excess of $800 million offered by the Saudis to play for Liv, and turned it down and said no. And other golfers also turned down huge amounts of money. This is an incredible thing. And if these reports are accurate, they should be given our highest accolades for standing up for principle. Now, the head of the PGA also condemned those golfers who accepted money and said, how could you do that? Don't you have any conscience? How could you take money from Saudi Arabia to play for them? And then that same head of the PGA then accepted an offer to merge with the very people that he was condemning, and said that, well, we had to do this as a business decision. So my take on this is that, in the Bible, it says that you shouldn't accept a bribe, because a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and the words of the most perspicacious. So it's wrong. They should not allow themselves to be bribed by Saudi Arabia. Most people say what Saudi Arabia does that's so bad is they had a journalist, Khashoggi, killed, and they also have waged a war in Yemen and done things there that many people feel are violent and vicious. However, my problem with Saudi Arabia, the worst thing that I believe they do, is to finance madrasas, where they teach children, I should say brainwash and indoctrinate children from an early age to accept a literal teaching of the Quran, which trains them to be hired killers, trained killers, killing machines, who are filled with hate for Israel, hate for America, and hate for the free world. That is an abomination. We should have nothing to do with a government that is actually training a new generation of hijackers, terrorists, and killers, and to wage jihad against Israel and the United States and the Western world. This is absolutely outrageous. I condemn it. And I think that the Pro Golf Tour should have stood tall and done whatever it could to survive without their money. Even if it meant suffering a huge financial hit, I think what they've done is immoral. And I think the people of the United States should respond accordingly, and perhaps reject them as a leader, as a golf leader, and maybe not watch their tournaments or not support them anymore. That's my position on it. I don't think we should live and let live.
So often money trumps morality. So often.
Yeah. So what's your take on this, Fritz? What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with you completely that they have no business being a part of such an immoral organization. But as I said, I argue with my wife all the time, because she said money runs the world. And I keep saying, no, it doesn't totally run the world. We do have some values here that can play a role in what goes on the planet. But money does play such a huge, powerful role in what happens.
It does, but the whole point of religion is not to go along with the way things are, but to be held to a higher standard, and to hold up ideals that take us from where we are to a higher level. Of course, money has a huge influence on what's going on in the world, but the role of religion is to say, no, there's a higher value. There's something else that should govern us, not just money. That is ideals and values and character. And it's not true to say that nobody accepts these values, because as I mentioned, some of the pro golfers turn down vast sums of money. So it's not true to say everybody only cares about money, or that's the only thing that matters. It is not true. Our job as religious leaders is to encourage those people who are able to resist the lure of bribery and hold them to a higher standard and present a higher ideal. And also to show that life is much more pleasant. Life is much more enjoyable when we have the ability to follow our conscience and live up to higher ideals. We have more self-respect when we do that than when we sell ourselves out for money. In fact, there was a person who said, I never listen to my conscience because I don't like to speak to strangers. So we don't want our conscience to be a stranger. We want to appeal to our conscience, and religion should encourage us to do so. Does anybody want to speak out on that issue before we move on to the next one? Sharon, go ahead.
So is it a done deal with the Saudis buying these pro golfers, with some certain pro golfers?
My understanding is that it was a done deal with certain golfers, but now they've signed a new agreement, and this is a done deal, their agreement with the PGA. And now with this new agreement, some of the pundits are not quite sure what effect that will have on the agreements that Liv made with these other golfers, whether they're going to honor those agreements or because of the merger, if those agreements are now no longer enforceable. That I don't know. But I believe that the merger with Liv and the PGA, I believe that is a done deal.
So that means that the Saudis will own the PGA golf course and the whole thing?
Well, they're certainly financing it, and they certainly will have major influence over it. Exactly how much influence and how this merger is going to work, people aren't really sure yet exactly about that. But they will have a major influence on pro golf in the United States. By the way, they try to buy up everything. They're trying to have influence all over our country by throwing their wealth around. And by the way, their wealth is coming from us. Every time we fill up our cars with gas, we're sending money over to Saudi Arabia so they can then spend money taking over our democratic way of life. So this is all the more reason why we need to get off of our dependence on oil and gas and come up with alternative energy. Because these oligarchs think they have us over a barrel with their slick politicians that are doing their bidding, and they're promising us an oil Wellian future. So we need to develop alternative energy very quickly in order to be independent of their influence and also to save our planet. And we'll be watching a movie pretty soon called Oppenheimer, which describes the effort of the United States to put some really smart people into a room together in Los Alamos and come up with new technology to develop the atomic bomb. We should be doing that today to develop alternative energy so we no longer have to depend on oil.
Jenny had something to say.
Oh, go ahead. Jenny, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay. Actually, almost preempted what I was going to say. I think that this gives the Saudis a foothold in our country, which is quite dangerous. And I agree with what you said, that the money is going to be flowing and who knows where it's going. And it just shows that money is, quote, God, and greed is the winner. I call this takeover, and I call it a takeover of the golf. I call it a takeover. I call it blood money.
Right.
And I think it's extremely distressing. It's rather scary because you don't know where the tentacles of the Saudis are going to reach. That's my
I agree with you. The attack on 9/11 is a direct result of Saudi Arabia and their madrasas and teaching their children to hate and to kill. So it is literally blood money. I couldn't agree with you more. My father used to say that the pilgrims who came here were seeking religious freedom. They came in search of God. The Spanish who came to South and Central America to plunder it, they were coming here in search of gold. And my dad used to say, between God and gold, there's an L of a difference. So the religious community should be trying to seek godliness and get off of this gold standard. Because when we sell ourselves out to the highest bidder, then our values as a country and a free country are threatened. By the way, Saudi Arabia, of course, has allied with Arab nations to try to destroy Israel for decades.
Right.
Right now, it seems like they may be having a rapprochement with Israel, and hopefully they'll be on good terms. But we don't want to sell out the interests of the United States to foreign adversaries, especially who have taken a hostile attitude towards us and to our allies. Let's talk about the Trump indictment now. First of all, Fritz, do you think that we should be commenting on that? And also, if so, what do you have to say about it? Where do you come down on this?
Well, we definitely should be commenting on it. Harry Melber read the whole thing today, I think, yesterday on his show, because I caught it on my iPhone today. He read the entire indictment, and it's devastating. It is absolutely devastating. And if the religious community cannot somehow see through this guy at some point, God forbid, they talk about the church and religion, or spirituality and religion kind of dying and so forth, but I'm telling you, we need it more than ever at this point in our existence.
It could be that the reason why organized religion is not doing too well is because it's silent about things that matter, and people find it irrelevant. I mean, if you're just going to talk about hypotheticals and imaginary figures in the sky and ideals without putting them into practice, that's just rank hypocrisy. So I agree with you.
Listen to Joel Osteen on Sunday morning. He will not say a thing about what's going on in the world.
Right, because his number one issue is bringing in money. And if he comments on an issue, then people who disagree with him on that issue will turn him off. Yeah. So all he wants is to build up an audience. So yeah,
money controls the church as well in many cases.
Absolutely. So my take is similar to yours, Fritz. I think that Trump clearly is a criminal. He's a traitor. He should be prosecuted, I think, for treason. And the penalties for treason are rather harsh. I think last time I checked, they were execution. And I think he should be prosecuted for treason. What he did on January 6th was start an insurrection to try to topple our democracy. When he said that the election was stolen, knowing that it wasn't, he's trying to topple our democracy. When he takes documents that are top secret and then bandies them about and shows them to anybody and doesn't turn them over, he's committing treason against the government. Especially these documents apparently had very, very sensitive secrets about nuclear weapons, about defense capabilities, about our allies. He clearly is committing treason. And I'll go one step further. I will say that anyone who supports President Trump in his commission of treason, they're co-conspirators of treason. If you vote for him, if you support him, if you excuse him when he commits treason, then you also are participating, collaborating, and aiding and abetting treason. This is a very serious matter. And these folks who are cult followers of Trump are committing treason against the United States.
And if he's found guilty, the penalties are pretty laid out in black and white.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if he's not prosecuted for treason, which I don't think he will be, the prosecution that he faces because of these documents are serious. And starting an insurrection is also very serious. Unfortunately, Hitler also tried an insurrection called the Beer Hall Putsch, and he wasn't punished significantly, and he tried it again. Trump also tried an insurrection like Hitler. He wasn't punished sufficiently, at least not at all so far. We hope he will be, but he shows every indication that he's going to try again. And it seems like there's a lot of people that are ready to back him and support him. This is a very dangerous thing. He's also unleashing anti-Semitism and violence against gays and people because of their sexual orientation. What he's doing is he's unleashing violence throughout the country. It's very dangerous, and I think he should be prosecuted for it.
When Ford pardoned Nixon, at the time, he was heavily criticized, and later on they thought it probably was the best thing. But now I'm telling you, now they're rethinking that whole thing of pardoning Nixon.
Yeah, right.
No.
What's also amazing is that, speaking as an attorney and a rabbi, is that Trump can't find an attorney. His attorneys are already either arrested, indicted, they're being investigated, and nobody wants to represent him. Normally, if you had a bunch of attorneys said, would you like to represent the president of the United States? They would jump at the chance. That would be a path to instant fame and fortune, representing the president of the United States or a former president. Now he can't even find an attorney. And when he does find them, they abandon him because he wants them to act like criminals. He doesn't want a criminal attorney. He wants a criminal to be his attorney. And they don't want to go to jail. So it's not even sure that he's going to even have an attorney at the arraignment tomorrow. They're talking about, well, maybe it'll have to be postponed. They don't know.
I did not hear that. Did not hear that.
Yeah, it's a really sad state of affairs that so many people are supporting a criminal and a traitor. Anybody want to comment on that before we move on to the next thing?
So
Karen.
my question, and then Ginny can speak up. My question is, if he is found guilty of the charges at the indictment or following it, will they allow him to continue to run the race of president of the United States again?
Well, the experts aren't really sure about that, but the prevailing notion seems to be yes, that even if he is indicted and he's being criminally prosecuted, and even if he is convicted, and even if he went to jail, apparently the prevailing notion is that he can still run for president from jail.
Well, the mafia leaders continue running their outfits from jail.
Yeah, he does bear a lot in common with the mafia leaders, and of course with fascists, with his attack upon his enemies and the press and everything else. But it's going to be a fascinating election season. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the primary, to see if the Republicans ever get enough courage to denounce him and to separate themselves from him, to see if they're actually going to elect a criminal who is being prosecuted to be their standard bearer. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward. It's going to be great entertainment to see what happens. And I think the Republicans are not going to do well in the next election. Ginny, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, one can only hope. I do not think that the Republicans will denounce him. I think that their minds are so twisted, clinically now, I'm speaking as a clinician. I think their minds are really gone. I don't know where they're coming from. They're totally unhinged. And they're like lemmings, they're just following. And it's very scary. I find it very scary. What is your opinion of, what do you think about this Judge Cannon? The New York Times had a whole article, an op-ed about her, and concern that she could actually ruin the whole indictment by some of her rulings. And I'm wondering, being an attorney, can she be overruled?
Well, she was overruled twice by the.
I know, but in this case, do you think that she could be?
Yeah, of course. She's a trial level judge. She could certainly be overruled by the appellate court, like she was before. But still, there's a whole bunch of things she can do in order to give Trump a very, very unfair advantage and to help him to stall and procrastinate. And also, you can't count on the appellate court overruling, because the appellate courts normally give the benefit of the doubt to the trial judge. So it has to be something pretty egregious to be overruled. So I'm very concerned about her. If she was a judge who had any type of integrity, she would recuse herself instantly. She was appointed by Trump, and she ruled in his favor so egregiously that she was overruled twice. So she clearly is not capable of rendering an objective decision. She should recuse herself. But yeah, I'm very concerned about her. I still think he'll be found guilty because the evidence is so overwhelming, but she should not be on this case.
She could just continue to delay things. I mean, can't she put things off? I mean, I'm not,
She could do all types of things to favor Trump. She could cause all types of mischief and skew the case in his favor and decide what evidence comes in and what doesn't. And she could slant things in front of the jury. It's a very bad situation. Our legal system has been completely corrupted, especially by appointing judges who then rule on cases that you're involved with. They should, if somebody appoints a judge and that judge comes up by a random choice, they should withdraw, in my opinion.
Will we be viewing this?
Was that?
Will we be viewing this trial?
That's the other thing. The federal court doesn't allow cameras in the courtroom. And I think that's wrong. I don't think it's fair to have this type of secrecy. We as the public have the right to see what's going on in these proceedings. And they don't have any right to keep it closed from us, especially a case of this importance and this magnitude. We have the right to see these proceedings. And I don't agree with sealing this. But that's what they do. Just like I don't agree with the Supreme Court holding itself above scrutiny, so that the highest court in the land can submit themselves to the lowest standards of any court. It's just not right. Well, this has been a very good discussion, and I think we're all unanimous so far that religious leaders have an obligation to comment and speak out. What we're not supposed to do is to back candidates. And that, I think, is a good rule. I don't think we, in an election, if there's two candidates running, we shouldn't say vote for this guy. But we can certainly comment on people who are in office or who held office and who are doing things that are immoral. We have an obligation to speak out about that. It seems unanimous. If there's anyone out there in cyberspace who disagrees, or if you know someone who disagrees, please let us know. And we'll be glad to have them on the next episode, so we can hear another opinion. That's what we thrive on, diverse views and opinions. We welcome people who disagree with us. Pastor Aufdencamp and I were both pro-choice. If there's anyone who is not pro-choice, we'd love to hear from you also. So I thank everyone for joining us. Fritz, I know you're out camping in the wilderness somewhere, but still you have access to the internet. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. I thank everybody for joining us. And Sharon, thank you so much for orchestrating this. And I invite everyone to join us on Friday night, this coming Friday, for our Shabbat celebration. You can be there live at the Heritage in Delray or by internet. We are always glad to see you.
Or they can join me Sunday morning.
Oh, very good. You can join Fritz Sunday morning, also at the Heritage in Delray. And what time do you start your services?
10:30 in the morning.
10:30. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just come and listen. Thank you very much, everybody.